Globalization requires a better understanding of cultural, political, economic and legal environments when conducting global business negotiations. Today I'm joined by Claude Cellich from the International University in Geneva and co-author of Practical Solutions of Global Business Negotiations. So Claude, first of all, what type of issues arise during global business negotiations?
Yes, there are a number of issues, a number of pitfalls that one should be aware of when doing business deals across different cultures. For example, the agreement. The agreement could be whether it is specific or general. Some cultures would have a very broad type of agreement, while a Western executive would like to have maybe a more specific one. There's also the fact that in some cultures you have to discuss the overall business deals before going into specifics, while others would like to talk about specific first and then discuss the overall deal. There's also communication. Some cultures are more direct, they use more direct, others are more indirect. For example, if an Asian will say to you, "We will think about your deal," it means we are not interested. You also have the time. Some cultures are linear, others are polychronic, which means that in some cultures, if you discuss an issue, there's a chance that they will come back and discuss other issues at the same time, which could be difficult for a linear type executive. Finally, you have what I would call risk. Some cultures are more risk-taking, while others are more, they would rather avoid risk. So these are, when you have people of different cultures, they should be aware of these.
And what cultures are the most risk-taking?
The risk-taking will be, I would say, the North American, because they are willing to take a risk if there's a good payoff, while in other cultures, if there's a risk, they would rather stay away from it.
And can you walk me through the 5 styles of negotiation and tell me why creative problem solving is considered the most successful?
Yes, studies over the years have described 5 different types of behavior. One is the avoider, a person who would rather be away from the negotiating table. Then you have the competitive one, the competitor who has one thing in his mind is to achieve his or her own results, even at the expense of the other side. You also have what I would call the dreamer, the person who believes that if I am good to you, you'll be good to me. If I give away a concession, you will give me one in return. That's the extreme. You have also the haggler. The haggler is a type of person who has a very short-term orientation and is only concerned about price. I'll give you this, I'll give you that, back and forth. The best one is what we consider the problem solver, because negotiation is about solving a problem. And the one who is creative, to think outside the box, will be the most optimal type of outcome.
And now let's look at the Nissan-Renault alliance. What type of issues arose during this alliance and how was creative problem solving employed?
Yes, that's a good example. When Renault and Nissan got together, there were a number of issues and problems. And Nissan was having difficult times. They were losing market share. For the last 5 or 6 years, they were losing money, while Renault was losing market share, had no presence outside of Europe, and financially they were quite sound. So they looked around and they decided Nissan would be the best partner for a merger. During the discussions, Nissan felt that maybe Renault was looking for an acquisition, not a merger. And so Nissan started to have discussions with Ford and Daimler, Chrysler. Ford did not show an interest. Then they went with Daimler Chrysler. They were quite interested. But in the end, they pulled out of the discussion because there were enough problems with absorbing Chrysler. So Nissan was left alone. And what took place here is very interesting, that Renault, instead of taking advantage of Nissan, actually increased their offer. This enabled the Anawa, the CEO of Japan, to save face, which is a nice way of building a relationship. And they increased their their participation from $3 billion to $5.4 billion. And then again, the problem solving came in there when, again, Nissan was wondering, we don't want a joint venture, we don't want to. And so the future CEO of Renault, Carlos Ghosn, at the time said, okay, let's have a partnership. And they agreed to have a global partnership agreement where both sides retain the headquarters, both sides retain their brands, both sides retain their identity. And that's why this creative problem solving was allow them to come together and bring the synergy. And today we see Nissan is doing very well.
And what other negotiations are particularly interesting when considering cultural, economic, legal and political environments?
Yeah, okay. Well, I can think of one. It's the AlcatelLucent negotiations. Both were losing to competition. And in 2001, they decided to discuss merger talks. What happened is after a few months, the Americans felt that, again, the French were not looking for a partnership. They were looking for an acquisition. So they pulled out. 5 years later, both firms again were really losing to competition. And so they decided to restart the discussions in 2006. And at that time, they were able to, they knew each other. They were aware of the cultural differences. And therefore, they came back, they were able to reach an agreement where both firms are now one firm, Alcatel and Lucent. In many cultures, if you don't have a relationship, you don't have a business deal. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you cannot reach agreement, at least you should save the relationship. And finally, let's not forget that in business, you don't get what you want, you get what you negotiate.
And what about politics in terms of global negotiations?
Well, that has to be that part of the preparation. It's this said that 80% of a negotiation depend on the quality of the preparation. So during the preparation, before the two sides actually meet, they have to do a lot of research. They have to find out about the political stability of the country, the financial stability, the legal aspects. All that has to be done well in advance.
Thank you very much, Claude.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Dukascopy TV. Tomorrow I'll be back with Nicholas Tuso from Michael Page to look at employment in the financial sector in Switzerland. For now, goodbye.